presentation. It's time to move for the next session, which is on public sector undertakings. And without delaying anymore, I now invite our Honorable Chair for this session, Mr. A.K. Nigam, Managing Director, Forest Development Corporation of Maharashtra. Sir, you are invited to please join us on stage. A round of applause for Mr. Nigam, please. He is trying to do a lot of things in terms of IT in his own corporation, and he'll let us know about them also. And then I invite Vice President and Plant Head Kochi, Petronet LNG. We welcome you, sir, with a round of applause. Petronet LNG is also a partner in this event. We thank them a lot for this. And there are a lot of initiatives in terms of IT. We have CMD's interview in this eGov, this issue of eGov. You will get to know with that interview, and you will get to know with the address by Honorable VP also. And then I invite Mr. Deepak Srivastava, Chief Vigilance Officer, Mahanadi Coalfields Limited. Please welcome him with a round of applause. He is a person who has done exemplary work in implementing IT for transparency in Mahanadi Coalfields Limited without affecting the production. So how has he done that, and how things are going in under the coal fields, he'll let us know with his presentation. And lastly, but not the least, I invite Mr. Umakant Lal, Chief Vigilance Officer, Dedicated Freight Corridor Corporation of India Limited. With a round of applause. He will also put up an interesting panel discussion. And with this, and I request panel to please complete it before 4 p.m. And with this request, I hand over the session to Mr. Nigam, please.
I have been asked to chair the session. I am also making a presentation, but that will be afterwards. Initially, I will invite the other panelists on this dais. Then I was thinking that I am the only forester here, but one more forester, but in a different capacity, Mr. Deepak Srivastava joined here. I wanted to say something with which you may be a bit uncomfortable. I do not too much believe in technology. I believe in strength of nature, and often we follow the policy, leave it to nature. There is a human interface, and that should always be kept in mind. When we are talking about contribution of PSUs, to the contributors to economic development. So economy does not include financial aspects. It includes delivery of goods and services to the communities. So when we are thinking of technology, we should always keep in mind that it should be beneficial to the society at large. There are 3 speakers other than me. First is Mr. Neelkanchan. He is Vice President O&M and Plant Head of Petronet. Petronet is, of course, related to petroleum, I believe, and that's very important source of energy. I give him the opportunity to speak first. You are most welcome.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The topic is public sector enterprises contribution to economic development, and I will be speaking about the company which I represent, which is Petronet LNG Limited. We are a major player in the oil and gas sector, in the gas sector, and the role of Petronet LNG in the energy economy. What is from Petronet LNG's perspective. Public sector enterprises, as we know, it has always played a very dominant role in our country, right from early days in the economic development. And prior to independence, we had the mammoth public sector enterprises, but were confined to very few sectors like railways, PNT, ordnance factories, and the like only. But post-independence, visionary leaders of independent India drew the roadmap for the development of PSUs as an instrument for self-reliant economic growth in the country. CPSEs have been the mainstay of Indian economy, and originally the mandate of setting up of CPSEs were to serve the macroeconomic objectives of higher growth, achieve self-sufficiency in production of goods and services, and facilitate long-term equilibrium in balance of payments, and ensure stability in prices, and create benchmarks of prices for essential items. With the onset of economic reforms in the early 90s, government initiated a systematic shift to a open or liberalized economy with reliance on market forces, and larger role was there for the private sector and foreign direct investment, and likewise. CPSEs were then exposed to competition from this domestic private sector, as well as large multinational corporations. And given the competitive environment, it was time that the CPSEs undertook significant initiatives for a scaling up of technologies, capacities in a massive way in order to stay competitive and operate at par with the private counterparts in this new liberalized regime. And with continued and focused efforts towards achieving excellence, several of the public sector enterprises naturally became self-reliant and are playing a critical role in the Indian economy. There are several shining examples, as we know, in the world scenario, competing with the world leaders, very big names who have done exceedingly well, like the Navaratna companies and the lot. And contribution to the central exchequer was one of the main contribution to the Indian economy, contribution to foreign exchange earnings, employment generation, no doubt. CPSEs played a massive role and emerged as a major wealth creator for investors and stakeholders based on growth witnessed in market capitalization. Of course, CSR not to be left behind. Many PSUs were the pioneers in CSR activities. And coming to the energy sector, as one of the fastest growing economies in the world, India is an upward growth trajectory leading to a steady growing demand of energy. It grows at the rate in which the economy is growing. Maybe the demand of energy matches with the growth in economy, which may be around 7 to 8%. And energy being the vital engine for growth, challenges to ensure a steady flow of reliable, clean and affordable energy to be sustainable in the long run. I come to know the company which I represent, which is Petronet LNG Limited. Petronet LNG Limited is a relatively new entity in the Indian corporate sector. It was formed as a result of unique Government of India's initiative in 1997 to ensure the security energy of the nation. And the cabinet decided that there needs to be a separate entity to ensure energy security of the nation, meet the growing energy requirements with special focus on LNG, which is liquefied natural gas. Natural gas consumption in the country then was limited only from domestic sources, the likes of ONGC, Bombay High, from their Bombay High and other fields, and Oil India, for example. And there was a lot of unexplored potential from domestic sources, which was hitherto not tapped. And we also had the inability to secure supplies through the transnational pipelines like TAPI and IPI and all the pipelines, which even now we are talking about, but has not come to reality. So Government of India mandated a PPP model, which is a public-private partnership model, to import LNG, set up LNG regasification terminals at places like Hazira, Dahej, Kochi, even Kayangulam near Kerala was one of the venues considered, or Ennur or any other suitable location. Participate in integration projects upstream and downstream of LNG terminals. Again, as I said, we have a very unique structure. It was incorporated in 1998, so we are just a 16-year-old company. We have an authorized capital of around 1,200 crores and a paid-up capital of around 750 crores. We started our commercial operations in 2004 with the commissioning of our terminal at Dahej, which was the first LNG terminal to go on stream. And the structure is that it is held, 50% of the company equity is held by the 4 oil majors, which is BPCL, GAIL, IOC, and ONGC, and 10% of it is held by a French company called Gaz de France, who had the technology. Back in 90s and early 2000s, we did not have the technology for LNG import into the country. So there was this company called Gaz de France who became our strategic partner. So 50% of the equity is held by government, though not directly. And again, the structure is very unique in the sense that the chairman of the company conventionally is the secretary of petroleum and natural gas, and then we have a board of directors. Coming to the energy consumption pattern, if you see, we are basically oil and coal-based economy with almost 80%. The upper circle shows the 2009 scenario, and the lower chart shows the 2013. Not much different. Around 75 to 80% of our energy basket comprises of coal and oil, and gas. Gas is occupied by only 9%. 9% of the energy basket is contributed by gas. India is a major gas and LNG consumer. We are the 15th largest consumer in the world. We consume something like around 140 to 145, maybe little updated figures as of now, 145 million standard cubic meters per day of gas. And we are the 4th largest importer of LNG, which is liquefied natural gas. And that comes to around 48 million standard cubic meters per day. And economy growing at 6%. We have a similar growth in energy consumption. Share of natural gas is around 9% at present. The attempt is to take it to 20% by year 2020 or 2025. And our major obstacles in this are the distribution network, which is a pipeline network which has to be laid throughout the country. Gas Authority of India Limited, which is one of our promoter, has the major responsibility of laying the pipelines. And if you see the sector-wise gas demand in the country, it is something like that 80% of the demand is met by power and fertilizer sectors and balanced by city gas, some industries, and others. So this is where this graph shows the relevance of this industry, which is liquefied natural gas industry. The bottom, that bottom curve, what you see is the domestic gas production in India by the likes of Reliance or ONGC or oil or Cane India. These are the gas producing companies in India. And the top one is the realistic demand that is there in the country. So if you see the 2014-15, our domestic production is something like 110 MMSCMD, and we have a demand of 2.5 times that. So this is where the relevance of LNG comes. LNG is trying to fill this gap between the domestic production and the total demand. These are just a pictorial view of the gas infrastructure which is available in the country. There are 4 working LNG terminals on the western side of India. The first one is Dahej, owned by Petronet LNG Limited. Second one is the Kochi terminal, which is again owned by Petronet LNG Limited. We have a small terminal owned by Shell and Total, Hazira, again in Surat, near Surat, and we have a 4th one, Dabhol. These are the 4 operating terminals, and there are many others which are in the pipeline. And as far as Petronet LNG is concerned, it was the first LNG terminal to start operations in India. It firmly established itself as an important player for meeting India's energy requirements. The Dahej terminal is one of the success stories of the terminals in this part of the world. It operates continuously at more than 110% of its capacity. Very few terminals have emulated that kind of performance over the years. And we also have signed a long-term contract with Qatar, which is the largest supplier of LNG in the world. And we have been making continuous profits right from inception. As I told you, the operation started in 2004, so we just completed 10 years of our operation. We are fairly a new entity in the gas, in LNG industry. And our revenues have been steadily growing from something like 5,500 crores in 2006 to around 37,000 crores in the last year. And this is some economic value generated figures. This is how we have been contributing to the economy. Just some statistics from the last year. We have generated something like 31,600 crores of economic value, and we have made payments of almost 6,000 crores to the government. And these are just some ratings of the company. Just to conclude, Petronet LNG Limited is the first Indian company to establish LNG imports to India, and starting its operation in 2004, it has established as a credible energy player importing large quantum of LNG. As on date, PLL supplies almost 30% of the gas consumed in India. And this sort of natural gas is the cleanest and greenest fuel that is available in the present day. And by supplying gas to these various industries, PLL has helped these industries substitute the more polluting liquid fuels and help the environment. And such large investments have been made possible only through joint ventures and participation by oil companies. So that is what I would like to conclude, that PLL has been the pioneer in the Indian LNG market and played a pivotal role in changing the Indian energy scenario in the last 10 years of its operation. And as the first company to import LNG, PLL is instrumental in shaping the growth of India's natural gas sector. Thank you.
Mr. Neelakantan, the price of petrol decides the price of every commodity in the country. You have made a very nice presentation. The next speaker is going to be Mr. Deepak Srivastava, who is Chief Vigilance Officer in Mahanadi Coalfields, basically a forest officer.
Not forget to thank ELETS for inviting me, for giving me an opportunity to speak before you. So, as you all know that coal is a primary source of energy, and despite billion tons of reserve, we had to depend on import of coal. It's unfortunate on our part, but my slides will be focusing on how we can enhance the operational efficiency in the coal-bearing areas and how we can prevent the theft of coal so that coal reaches the power-producing companies without any hindrance and without any irregularities taking place inside the coal field, which the coal fields are known for. It is also again unfortunate that entire coal sector is known for, has been in news for the wrong reasons. But I would like to showcase that how we can work in the coal sector with enhanced degree of transparency and fixing accountability and responsibilities on the coal, on the coal companies. So here we go. Most of the slides I will run through, but only some of the few slides are there. I will focus on. Next, please. This is a very profile of the company, and main thing is that this is 22. We have got mines total 16 open cast and 6 underground, and profit after tax of the Mahanadi Coalfields Limited, which is a mini Ratna, is 5,000 crore. Next. Now here, this is on the lines of RailNet. We have got CoalNet in Coal India. This was in disjointed manner. It was just in bits and pieces working in the entire coal fields. So vigilance, which is a management function, no doubt, but vigilance has to be a part of the overall risk management of the company. So we initiated this, we took this effort, and earlier it was working only in the headquarter. Now with great efforts, now it is working in the 2,700 square kilometers of area, total Mahanadi Coalfields. Each headquarter location, every project location has been, you can say, brought under the networking of the CoalNet, and all the functional areas have been put on CoalNet so that we can have transparency as far as possible. Next. These are the things which are on CoalNet. Personal information system like this, we have got, this is for executives. Entire vital details are on the CoalNet. It is for public viewing. Anybody can put the employee's code number and can track the details of the employee. Next, please. This is for non-executives. So executives and non-executives have been a part of the CoalNet earlier also, and total 34,000 of employees, executives, non-executives, and this contractual have been put on CoalNet. This was the gray area, contractual, because there were instances where the inflated wage bill were being raised, and there was a lot of manipulations in preparation of the wage bill for the contractual workers. So with this thing on the CoalNet, we could prevent the irregularities in the field of payment of the in the field of contractual payments. Next. This is online material management system, because stores are vital for the sustenance of the coal sector. And now we have in Mahanadi Coalfields Limited 96,000 store items. So now all the 96,000 these store items have been numbered. That has been codified as per the Coal India Limited guidelines norms. And with this, 99% of the store items have been codified. The total inventory stock is worth rupees 100 crore. Now with this, we have been able to prevent this creation of artificial demands. And there is a control over the inventory now. We can see in the next slide. Now this is the area-wise stock value is also listed. This is all on CoalNet. Whatever I am talking on CoalNet. And this is all total items, opening value, stock value, variance, everything is on CoalNet. Next, please. This is store-wise stock is there. All the regional stores, 13 regional stores are there in Mahanadi Coalfields Limited that have been connected through the CoalNet. And now with this, I will come on this, just previous slide please, just a minute. With this, one thing has happened that every store can view that what store items are lying in which respective stores, so there need not be a duplication of indenting, and items can be transferred from one store to another, and we can prevent unnecessary indenting and artificial demands, as I said. Next, please. This is again a very important step we took as a vigilance tool. There was a lot of bungling in the contractual payments. It was not first come, first serve. So we started this by putting, first was entry part, then was acknowledgement part. Third part, please. This is the real-time monitoring of contractual bill payments. We started during November 2012, and in 2 years, we could know that how much contractual bill payment we have made on real-time basis, and the figure is 3,800 crores, 3,800 crore rupees of contractual payments we have made in a transparent manner, and this is again on Coalnet, and it can be viewed by contractors also, and the status is available on the website of the MCL also. These are the bill details in the MCL website. These are the refund details in MCL website. Next. These are sales and marketing, because coal consumers lifts coal, and there is again a discretion on the part of officers dealing with the sales and marketing to give due to this fellow first, and then ask that fellow to lift first, give priority, whoever give bribe money like that. So with this status, no please, with this status of DO on the Coalnet, first come, first serve. First take the DO, then go lift, then take the another DO, go and lift. This is all available on the Coalnet and website. So it also prevents irregularity in a large way. Next, please. These are the IT initiatives. Next, I will just explain one by one. This is our e-procurement portal. This was designed in 2009 with the help of NIC Chennai. All the goods and services are being procured through e-mode, e-procurement above 2 lakh. Threshold value is above 2 lakh. And till date, 6,000 crores of tenders have been procured, 6,000 worth rupees of goods and services have been procured through this portal. Next, please. These are the salient features of this. Just a minute. These are the salient features of this. There is no offline data. Everything is online. Even the technical evaluation part is also done by the portal. No human intervention is required. And this e-procurement portal costed just 85 lakh of rupees. That was paid to the NIC Chennai during 2009. Till now, we have not paid a single amount. Even maintenance cost is not being paid. It is being taken care of from that 85 lakh amount. Next, please. This was another grey area, refund of EMDs. Refund of EMDs were being delayed in Mahanadi Coalfields Limited for 1 year, 6 months, even 2 years. Now, as a forward linkage to the e-procurement portal, now with the click of the button, next day, unsuccessful bidders are getting the refund in auto mode back to their accounts from where the fund came to our account. And this has been developed by, again, NIC Chennai and Axis Bank Mumbai. And till now, we have been able to, this was inaugurated during last Vigilance Awareness Week in 2013. And in 1 year, 3,000 odd unsuccessful bidders have got back 7 crore of amount in just 1 or 2 days. Next, please. This, I just wanted to give a glimpse of what the coal industry is all about, how the theft takes place, how there are chances and manipulation of coal payment, and you see that how the trucks laden with coal is just standing. Now, for payment of this coal, for accountability of this coal, there has to be a very foolproof structure which can take care of you can say that transparency part. No, next please. Now see, in 2011-12, there was a process which I am showing. What was the process of coal payment? Please click the video. This was the process in 2011-12. This is a electronic weigh bridge. The truck is coming and it is standing, and Mahanadi Coalfield is producing 110 million tons of coal. Now you can imagine with this process whether we will be able to weigh 100% coal or not. It is virtually not at all possible. Only 5 to 10% of payment was taking place, and rest 90%, 80 to 90% was in average. So it attracted a serious vigilance angle. Now what happened? These are all manual things going on. You can skip this slide. Next one. Now, how we have evolved? Now see, this is a, no, no, no. You show the video. Next, next. You show the video. Yeah. Now this is the, now this truck is moving. It is an in-motion wave bridge. This is a RFID tag. This is an RFID reader. This is another wave bridge. This is one, this is second. Now this, earlier we used to weigh only one truck in 5 minutes. Now 6 to 7 trucks are being weighed in 1 minute. It is passing hassle-free manner. With this, 90% of the 90 to 100% of the payment is possible. Pilferage and theft and even manipulation, fudging of coal records, coal payment records can be prevented. And this gave a very good respite to the vigilance, because I will show you in the future slides how this coal payment is being accounted for. Now this is a monitor inside. No driver, none of the driver is getting down the vehicle. It is automatically been recorded. It is going, and one monitor will come. This is recorded here inside, and similarly truck owners can also see outside what is the weight. I will just show, it is just coming. So this has become a regular process, and now you see this is the gross payment. So there's total transparency on the part of officials as well as our stakeholders. Now this is what I wanted to show. With all the coal weigh bridges, in-motion weigh bridges, we have connected through CoalNet. Now whenever truck passes, because it's a basement, we cannot get live data, but I have asked my officer to go outside and take live data of today. So it's all, you see 15th November 12:58, this was the tier weight, this was the gross weight, this was the net weight. So we have reached to a stage of real-time transmission of coal payment data, which will prevent fudging with no manipulations, nothing. And the produced coal will reach to the siding and to the power producers. Next, please. Now again, this is again an area where this is a gray area, because inside the mines, whether truck diversions are taking place, whether the trucks are crossing the mine boundaries and going outside, and theft of the coal is taking place or not. Next. So this is the all, no, nothing, just move. Next slide, next slide. Now this is the GPRA. What is happening? Oh, sorry. Okay. This is the GPRS in the truck. We have got 2,000 tippers. GPRS is fixed in 2,000 tippers. Next slide, please. Next slide. Now this is monitoring, how it is taking place, monitoring in the central server. You will see that this will change. This changes. This is entire mine area, which is the tipper movement is being monitored through GPRS. Next slide, please. This is a geofencing. This is a geofencing area. This is geofenced area. Whenever any truck violates the geofence area, alert will come on our system. Next. You wanted to show the tracking, no? Yes. How the truck is moving, we can even show that, we can even know that how the truck has passed the previous day. This is the movement of the truck, which is going. And we can see on the next day also how was the history of that particular truck movement, even transporter-wise, even truck-wise. Next, please. This is trip summary of the coal tipper, how this has passed, what is the trip details. Even we can monitor lead of which is the lead is a major gray area and has vigilance angle, because manipulation of lead takes place in claiming the bills. Next. This is violation summary of the coal tipper. We can manage how many violations have been made in one day. Next, please. This is CCTV cameras in motion and railway sidings have been just installed. Next, please. This is how the CCTV railway siding. Next, please. This is CCTV railway siding. How now you can see that video. You can see how this is. We can keep tab on each of the tippers, and even numbers can be also when we take close up. when we can, through CCTV footage, we can monitor that which tripper has passed which area and what is this carrying, like that. Next, please. Now this is camera snapshot of coal tipper on Bay Bridges. You can just see that date, time, what are those there, which vehicle. Now this CCTV footage will come on the central server. Next, please. Now this is future roadmap. That is what we have achieved has to be strengthened. Then online file tracking system and complaint tracking system is on, just we have prepared, the module is ready for implementation. Then use of SARPAG and 3D laser technique for coal and OB measurement, because coal stock measurement itself is a gray area and there also a lot of manipulations takes place, so this will take care of that. And post-award contract management module. Up till now we have got monitoring up to declaration of the L1 bidder, but from the date of award of work till the completion of contract we don't have any monitoring mechanism, so this will take care of the monitoring mechanism. Thank you so much for patient listening, and thank you so much.
कोयले की दलाली में हाथ काले, तो वो हाथ काले जो है उसको कैसे साफ करना, उन्होंने बहुत मेहनत की है, तो very well presented. I have to monitor the time. Please bear with me. Next speaker is Mr. Umakant Lal, from one chief vigilance officer to another chief vigilance officer. He is representing the organization that is Dedicated Freight Corridor Corporation of India Limited. He is basically a police officer in the vigilance job. Yes, please. Welcome.
Like Deepak, he mentioned about the vigilance angle, I will come later on. As my predecessor spoke about the role of public sector enterprises in a number of activities which they have taken from their inception. The one is the development of industrial base. As you all know that at the time of independence, there were hardly any PSUs. Only PSUs like Indian Ordnance Factory, Railway, all these things were available at that time. But once in the first 5-year plan, it was noticed that the target is not being achieved by the government. They decided to go for the industrial base, because India at that time needed a huge industrial base. And they set up industry like SAIL, BHEL, HL, etc. at that time. And the late 60s and early 70s, even they nationalized the coal blocks and banks also. Then after in 1780s, they again set up the huge industrial base by setting up the industry like ONGC, Indian Oil Corporation, NTPC, and a number of major PSUs. So now we have a huge industrial base in India which can be compared with the other countries of the world. The second role which PSU is playing is the employment generation. As you know, every PSU have a strength, which some of them they recruit directly, and some of them they take on deputation, and in some PSU they absorb the people also. Even sick units are also being taken over by just keeping if the people not get unemployed. One estimate that 2/3 of total employment organization in the sector is in PSU. Balanced regional development is also one of the very key aspect of the setting of the PSUs, because in earlier you are knowing that there are some states who are very developed like Gujarat, Maharashtra, etc. But there are states like Bihar, West Bengal, Odisha, they were not developed at that time. It was thought that these areas should be also developed. That is why the steel plants of Bhilai, Rourkela, Durgapur, fertilizer factory Sindri in Bihar, and other PSUs were installed, set up. Next is a contribution to public exchequer. As earlier predecessor also spoke about that. Exports earning, a number of items which were not being made in India were importing at that time. Now a number of things we made in India through the setup of PSU. That is how we
export them and we earn the money also. We do the import substitution also, and all the PSUs pay the corporate taxes, excise and custom duty. Thus we contribute to the public exchequer. Development of ancillary industries. Ancillary industries development has been a government plan also in the government of India. Wherever there are major PSUs, a number of ancillary industry have been also developed to supply the parts which major PSUs are required. In that we have a number of ancillary units like around the Bokaro Industrial Complex, Heavy Engineering Complex, Ranchi, Bhel Complex at Bhopal, Haridwar and Hyderabad. Next is the contribution to increase agriculture production. We all know by developing high-yielding varieties of seeds, controlling crop diseases, innovative agriculture practices, we contributing in the increase of the agriculture production. A number of research laboratories are there in the field of agriculture which are making a huge contribution in high-yielding varieties of seeds. And the next, the most important thing is for the community development and social justice. Whenever there is a major PSU is set up, they develop their township, they develop schools, they develop hospitals, and thus, and not only that, they also develop they look after the labor welfare and their security also. They pay more, they look after them. And the second aspect is reducing concentration of power in private hands. You know, the number and the size, which the way and the strength, the way the PSUs are increasing, monopoly of the private hands are decreasing. Promoting public control of national economy. National economy, it should not be governed by the private people. Government should always have a total control on it. It is through the PSU that we are determining those approaches. Last is the creating socialistic pattern of society. If we adopt all these methods which I have mentioned, we are going to create a socialistic pattern of society where more or less to keep everybody happy. Now I switch over to my organization, DFCL. I think many of you may not be knowing much about the DFCL because at present we are constructing only 2 corridors. It's a totally dedicated freight corridor. It's only for the goods train. It has nothing to do with the passenger trains. So now I switch over to that, my presentation. Dedicated freight corridor project and overview. Genesis of dedicated freight. Why it was thought that separate freight corridors should be opened. This slide shows that in around 50 years there was a traffic of 400 million tons, while in 10 years, 2001 to 2012, it increases to 502, where there was in 50 years only 400 million ton. Within 10 years there has been increase of 502 million ton. That was the basic need which attracted the mind of the Indian Railway to go for this project. 16% of railway route carries 52% of the passenger and 58% of freight, which connected with all 4 these major cities. Rest 84% is covered by the whole of India. So there is a huge congestion on this sector. So in order to decongest this sector, it was necessary that separate freight corridors should be opened. These were the concern for the railway: falling market share, the share market for the traffic, which was much more in earlier, it went down to 36%. Capacity consent I show in the next last slide. Differential speeds of train. As you know, the goods train are generally run on a very low speed in comparison of high speed train like Shatabdi, Rajdhani, etc. So they take a longer time. Inadequate ports and mines connectivity. Indian Railway is poorly connected with the ports and mines. Inability to carry longer, heavier tons. We, unlike Western countries, we have a very small wagon system which carries very less weight and it has less width also. lower throughout, longer turnaround. Whenever the goods train reaches a destination, it takes a very long time to come back. So in order to remove these shortcomings, the dedicated freight corridors came into existence. Only following possibilities were there: upgrading the existing network, creation of a new passenger corridor, or creation of a new dedicated freight corridor. These are the two lines which are being seen by red mark. These are the two sanctioned corridor. One is from Ludhiana to Calcutta, which we call Eastern Corridor, and the other one is from Delhi to Mumbai, which we call Western Corridor. Other lines which you are seeing in the blue, they are under sanction. These are this slide shows which cities they are connecting. This whole project has been divided into a number of parts. That is why the phases APL1, APL2, APL3 has been written. APL1 has been already awarded of rupees 3,500 crore. It's a very huge project, and this whole dedicated project is of rupees 80,000 crore, which we will see later on the slide. These are the objectives through which we are going to achieve through this dedicated freight corridor. DFC to manage train operation. Operation of the train will be managed by the DFC. DFC to have own station and control center also. Like we have a railway stations, we will have a yard stations, separate yard station of DFCC. Other things will be looked after by the railway. This is the design feature of the wagon which we are going to procure. Existing, this is the Indian Railway which is using, it's a 4.265 meter height. We will be having the 7.1 meter in the Western Corridor and 5.1 in Eastern Corridor. Width, present width is 3,200 mm. We will have the 3,660 mm. Container will be in the Western Corridor, it will be double stack, and in the Eastern Corridor it will be single. The length will be from 700 to 1500 meter, which now we have only 700 meter. Train load will be 4,000 ton at present, which will be increased up to the 15,000 ton in our system. Axle load, at present there is a 22.9 up to 25 ton. It will increase up to 32.5 ton. Load simultaneously, the load density will increase. Speed will go up to the 100 km from 75 km. These are the impacts which freight corridor comes in existence. We are going to achieve all these things. Transport capacity enhancement will be there. Faster movement will be there, which I have already shown in the last slides. Special services, automobiles, RO. Container from the ports can be directly loaded to the train, which was not being done earlier in goods train. Now it can be possible. Even if somebody doesn't want to go by road and he wants that his vehicle should go by train. Even the truck, which we see that on the road a number of truck is going, that truck can be loaded directly from the port and that can go up to the any destination. That facility is there, which in Western countries have. Simultaneously, decongestion of major highway will be there. Development of industrial corridor will be also there. Delhi, Mumbai industrial corridor will come into existence, and Amritsar, Kolkata industrial corridor will be also come into existence. Our railway will become greener also. So these are the facility which we are going to advantage, which we are going to achieve if we have this total dedicated freight corridor. These are the things which we will be carrying from the other places. Like in Eastern Corridor, we will have a coal, iron, steel, cement, food grain and RO traffic. Western Corridor will have a container, fertilizer, coal, petroleum products, automobile, cement and other things. How the projected traffic which has been given, it will increase. It will go in the eastern corridor up to 251 million ton, and the western corridor it will go up to the 224.3 million, which will increase the share of railway on the traffic. Funding arrangement, this project has been, western corridor is being funded by the Japanese government and the eastern corridor is being funded by the World Bank. This model has the PPP model also, right? From the Son Nagar to Dankuni, which comes to near to Calcutta, that is under the PPP model. Even private person can also come in this picture. This is the timelines which have been projected about the completion of project. There are some features which I would like to skip, not much to your concern. This already I have spoken earlier. These are the future corridors which are projected. East-West corridor, Kolkata, Mumbai. North-South corridor, Delhi, Chennai. East Coast corridor, Kharagpur, Vijayawada. Southern corridor, Chennai, Goa. The RITES are doing already survey of these corridors. Once we get the report, most likely to be submitted by December, then it appears that this project will also come in the picture. And the project which now it appears to be rupees 80,000 crore, may be possible that total may become a 5 lakhs crore project for whole India. These are the some things which, since my friend Deepak mentioned, despite huge potential for growth and development, Indian PSUs face several problems. You all know about this, like poor project planning, overcapitalization, excessive overheads, overstaffing, underutilization of staff, inefficient management. Last but not least, the corruption, which my friend Deepak was mentioning. Impact of corruption, you all know corruption is a serious economic issue, affects country economic development, promotes inefficiencies in utilization of resources, compromise with quality, damage to environment, threat to national security also. These are the Transparency International indicators, which show that India ranked at 94 among the 177 countries. Even country which are seen very clean, we rank to 36, Denmark number 1. A study shows that 50% of the people in India had a first-hand experience of paying bribe, and estimated rupees 40,000 crores is lost due to delay in projects. It's a very important thing one should notice always. Delay in projection, delay in decision, it creates a huge loss to the PSUs. If corruption is eliminated, these are the findings. PSU would increase profit margin by about 20%, investment would increase by 12% annually, GDP would grow at an additional 1.5%. So being in a dedicated freight corridors, we are also giving direct employment to the people. We are making an industrial base for the country, and we are paying exchequer, corporate tax and other things. That is why the role of the DFCL is very important. And with this, I thank my chairman to allow me to speak for such a long time and the audience to listen me patiently. Thank you.
Other few very, very important and major projects which are going to contribute in a great way in the GDP. Now it's my presentation. This is regarding e-governance and improving the productivity in the forestry sector. I'm dealing with natural resources, you can understand. The first slide is about forest cover of Maharashtra. I'm working in Maharashtra, in the Forest Development Corporation, on the land obtained from Forest Department. The forest area is 61.94 lakh hectares in the state of Maharashtra, and we are working at the moment on 3.67 lakh hectares. Before proceeding further, I would like to say that everything emanates from Constitution of the country. directive principles of the state policy 48A says that the state shall endeavor to protect and improve its natural environment, and fundamental duties of every citizen of this country, that is 51A, that says that shall be the fundamental duty of every citizen of this country to protect and improve its natural environment, that includes forests, wildlife, rivers and lakes, and to have compassion for every living creature. So proceeding further on that, there is National Forest Policy which says that 1/3 of the total land area should be under forest, and when it comes to wildlife, that includes animal as well as plant life, then it says that 4 to 5% of the total land area should be dedicated for protected areas, that is national parks, sanctuaries, tiger reserves, etc. We are into production forestry, and as I have mentioned, we are operating on nearly 6% of the forest area obtained from Forest Department, and of course some other agency which I shall be mentioning shortly. Corporation started its working initially as board with 4 divisions in 1969, and the primary objective was to convert low-value miscellaneous forests into high-value teak forest, having high economic value, very valuable tree. As you all know, teak is the predominant tree species of Maharashtra, often described as green gold. It is ideal timber species. It is strong light demander from the beginning till end. That means it doesn't come up under the canopy. So initially the methodology was clear felling and planting. 1974 onwards it became corporation, registered under Companies Act 1956, and is forerunner in the country when it comes to corporation in the field of forestry. There had been 3 phases in our working. First phase was of clear felling prior to 1987, clear felling and planting. Then Government of India imposed restrictions, and it said that no clear felling. Our forests need respite, so no clear felling. Truly speaking, I believe that this prescription was not applicable to the state of Maharashtra because it is basically teak species. Teak is the predominant species, as I have mentioned, and it is a strong light demander. So number of divisions initially were 18, and harvesting followed by planting over an area of 8,005 hectares was undertaken. We have raised during that period 1.24 lakh hectares of teak plantation. Since clear felling was banned in 87, we went into planting of miscellaneous species over wastelands obtained from Forest Department. Lot of such area has been returned to the department. Many of the programs were undertaken under EGS and funds from NABARD. Then World Bank project came into picture. During that period also a lot of plantations were raised. Root trainer nurseries, clonal nurseries, high-tech, that was prepared. Seed centers at Nagpur and Nasik were prepared. Plantation inventory unit for the monitoring of the results of the plantation was created. We got some loans from World Bank. There is no loan now. All have been paid back. Corporation as such is self-sustaining. We don't get funds from government. We are paying salary to our people. 2002 onwards, we developed another system, that is removal of overwood and planting. When it comes to any felling, for your information, there should be a management plan. There should be approval from Government of India, and there are so many orders of Supreme Court. The main one is Godavarman case, and the Supreme Court is monitoring the management of forests and wildlife, truly speaking. So these are the plantations in the last phase. Overall, so far we have undertaken plantations over an area of 5.31 lakh hectares. This is a record in itself. In terms of quality as well as quality, the plantations are superb and are of international standard. I would like to mention here that we have created assets of about 800 crores as per book value. These are live assets. The market value may be 3,000 or 3,500 crores. About 30 lakh man-days are generated every year. Some of the photographs of the plantations, old, new both. This is bamboo. This is an important associate of teak. We undertake its planting also. When it comes to harvesting, we have given the data of the last few years. This in terms of area in hectares. So about 35 to 40,000 hectare area is harvested. These are the results of logging operations. This Ballarsha depot, famous depot. For your information, there is a place in Maharashtra called Allapalli that falls in Gadchiroli that produces the best quality timber in the world, best quality teak timber. And that is marketed through this division. The type of products which are produced: timber, poles, firewood, bamboo, bamboo bundles. Bamboo bundles are mostly supplied to paper mills. This again Ballarsha depot. Revenue realized roughly about 150 crore rupees every year. We undertake turnkey projects also, planting for other agencies. 270 such projects have been undertaken. Plantation have been attended over 2,500 hectares. 60 lakh plants, 35 crore rupees worth work we have done. We undertaken planting for agencies like WCL, NHAI, NTPC, Defense, Film City, etc., etc. This is a plantation of Shivan, Melina arborea. This is from turnkey project, miscellaneous species. Seedling production is of the order of 150 lakhs on an average. This is seed production area. We undertake planting of good quality genetic material. This is one nursery, Chulman Nursery in Gondia, that is ISO certified. These are teak plants, tea seedlings. This is bamboo nursery, same. Root trainer nursery, teak seedlings in root trainers. When it comes to protection, law as it is applicable to Forest Department officers, it is giving same powers to the officers of FDCM, and there is a good network through which we are protecting the area. We have staff as well as communication methods. In the field of wildlife management also we have done wonderfully well. I would like to mention here that lot of forest corporation area has been converted into sanctuaries because it was so rich in wildlife. Then we have undertaken the diversification of the activities. We are developing one international standard zoo at Gorewada, Nagpur. This also includes a rescue center. All permissions are in place. The area is unique in the sense that it is largest and best. We are working over 1,914 hectares. There is no zoo of this dimension. Part of the area will be dedicated for wilderness. This includes Gorewada Zoo also. We have developed Biodiversity Park in Rajbhavan, Nagpur. We have got the citation from Honorable Governor for that. We are into medicinal plant conservation as well. And ecotourism activity we have started since last 3 years. We are working on basically tiger reserves. Important one is Tadoba Andhari. Then Nabegaon, Nagzira, Melghat and Bor. These are the areas where we are working. Online reservation has been started since last 2 years. mahaecotourism.in, that is with the support of Maha Online. That is a site on which you can do all the reservation. This is the company which is accredited by CAG. There are no pending audit paras, and we have got full admiration from CAG for its working. We are following all accounting procedures and timely operations. Profit-making company since 88, 89, giving dividend to government since last 5 years. We are adopting recent management tools and technological upgradation is being done on day-to-day basis. ICT, IT, both are being applied. Now some achievements. We have been asked to recruit the range forest officers. RFO is a gazetted officer in the state of Maharashtra. MPSC was supposed to be doing this, but they said the corporation should do this job. We use this technology for their current purpose. And I can boast here that it was absolutely fair. There was not a single complaint. Afterwards, we have filled up about 300 posts in the same way. I have mentioned about booking through online for the ecotourism purpose. Modern forest fire control project was implemented by FDCM in the state of Maharashtra, basically at Chandrapur and areas around that. We had aircraft as well as modern tools for fire protection. This is ecotourism. I have mentioned about ISO to you. I'll switch over. Most of the staff is old, except for whatever recruitment has taken place in this year. So we are trying to provide them the skills so that they perform better. Advertising, publicity, that is also through communication techniques. And we are trying to go ahead in the field of paperless office. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. For the patient listening, I thank you all, and I thank all the panelists. I don't know if there is any time for asking any questions. Karthik says no. So I thank all the panelists and thank the audience for the patient listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now, I request my team to get the mementos, and I request Honorable Session Chair to present mementos to our speakers. Yes, our guest from Petronet LNG, and then our guest from Mahanadi Coalfields, Mr. Deepak Srivastav, and then finally our guest from DFCCIL, Umakant Lalji, Chief Vigilance Officer, Dedicated Freight Corridor Corporation of India Limited. So we request for a group photo with our Honorable Chair and our esteemed panelists, including Mr. T.N. Neelkantan, Vice President and Plant Head, Petronet LNG, a speaker from Mahanadi Coalfields Limited, and a very important speaker from Dedicated Freight Corridor Corporation of India, and Honorable Chair, Shri A.K. Nigamji from Forest Development Corporation of Maharashtra. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you to the panelists. And I always forget that, and my apologies, sir. I request all of them to please present a memento to sir. Please. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So with this